how do you build a claw in a way where it's safe, where you can give it all of the rich context from your Notion and your Slack and your Discord and your Telegram and your emails, give it some of your passwords and actually have it utilize that context to be truly useful. Because if you don't give your claw very much information, it can't do very much for you. If you give it access to everything, it can do a lot for you.
Hey everyone, welcome to the Smart Economy Podcast, where we ask your favorite builders the questions you wish you could ask yourself. This is a production of neonewstoday.com, and I'm your host, Dylan Grabowski. In this episode, we're joined by George Zeng, the CPO of the Near Foundation, a nonprofit organization that acts as a steward for the development and adoption of the Near blockchain protocol and Near AI. In this conversation, we talked about the early days of thought leaders in the Bitcoin and crypto space at SF Bay Area meetups, the power of user-owned information, the various privacy-oriented features that Near is building within their suite of products, why OpenClaw took the world by storm, how leapfrogs in technology take place at the interface level, Near AI's IronClaw, opening the door to enterprise adoption, and so much more. Just a reminder, nothing said on this podcast is a solicitation to buy or sell any tokens, and that the guest or host might hold tokens discussed in any given episode. You can check out a disclaimer at www.neonewstoday.com. And if you enjoyed this podcast, please consider showing your support by reviewing or rating it on your favorite podcasting platform and sharing with your friends and family. Every rating, review, like, comment helps us get in front of more ears and eyes and bring you more of your favorite guests. With all that said, I really enjoyed this conversation with George, and I hope you enjoy it too. What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Smart Economy Podcast. I am super psyched about this conversation that we're going to have today. We're joined by George Zeng, the CPO of Near Foundation, amongst many hats that you wear. George, how are you doing today?
I'm doing wonderful.
We were kind of talking before we even hit the record button about how we're at this crazy inflection point right now where it feels like we're in the middle of the parabolic rise of an S-curve. And I made a comment about a conversation that I had with some friends about how we feel like we're not early enough because the only people we're talking to are the folks who are in this S-curve right now. So where are we in terms of AI and AI adoption? Is it just the people on like crypto Twitter and OpenClaw Twitter and AI Twitter that are in the know, or is the rest of the world catching up?
We are in different waves. So even for AI tools like ChatGPT or Claude, we think that the world has adopted it because we're on crypto Twitter, we're on AI Twitter. But if you ask your friends, I grew up in Mississippi. When I ask my friends in Mississippi how many of them are using AI tools, there's some that are using them, but the adoption isn't nearly as widespread as it is if you spend your time on Twitter. But that is the most widely adopted AI tool. ChatGPT, Anthropic, Gemini, mostly ChatGPT. Outside of, I find, Silicon Valley as well as the Twitter crews, people really don't know Gemini or Anthropic, Claude, or Grok nearly as well.
Mm-hmm.
But you have this new thing, which is OpenClaw, that took the world by storm, the open source community by storm, at least over the last few months. That is, I think, not very well known outside of tech, outside of Twitter, outside of a few select communities. If you ask your friends outside of tech in places like Mississippi, where I grew up, very few of them have heard of OpenClaw. And then even fewer of them have actually tried it.
Cool. Let's just take one little quick step back because I think we're going to open up a whole can of worms and a barrel of monkeys here. When I was looking into who you are and what your background is, it's like pretty fascinating. You've spent time at Goldman Sachs, McKinsey, Groupon, Facebook, and then you got into blockchain and crypto. So can we just kind of like do the story arc of your professional career? How did you kind of like jump into the working world at Goldman Sachs? And then how did you find your way through your professional journey to being the CPO at Near Foundation?
Yeah. I will give you straight, unvarnished version of that story because people oftentimes try to reconstruct a master plan after the fact. Like, oh, I had this all planned 20 years ago. I did not have this all planned coming out of college. I graduated from college young. I graduated when I was 20 out of college. So I did what all the other people who were graduating from colleges at the same time were doing when they left school. So if you were a, pretty relatively smart kid coming out of college, you were told that you had basically two paths in life if you didn't do a preordained career like a lawyer or a doctor or an engineer. If you're a generalist, like a business person. And basically I was told your two options in life are banking or consulting. So I went down the banking path. So I did Goldman Sachs, had a wild time, worked really hard, learned a lot of very, very cool stuff, had met a lot of really great friends. But I don't know if you've had friends who've gone through banking before. Most people do not like banking. Most people do not like working 100-hour weeks, 110, 120-hour weeks. And the work was interesting at times, but it felt very, very manual, very, very repetitive. Mm-hmm. So I was very curious to see if there was other things that one could do with one's life. So I did banking in New York. Then I went to Asia where I did investing at a place called TPG Axon. That was interesting as well. But I felt always, I believe that the one's mission in life, a very important mission in life, is find product market fit for the person, in addition to product market fit for products. The fit never felt there, and I always felt I would be a better fit for helping to run companies or products rather than advising, investing, consulting companies. So I took one step in that direction by joining McKinsey, where I did consulting work, where I worked more directly with teams on the ground. Really enjoyed it. Went back to grad school. Along the way, tried out Groupon because I had a sneaking suspicion that entrepreneurial ventures would be a great fit for me. All my friends have told me that we're a very entrepreneurial guy. Did that, had so much fun. So when I went back to grad school, I knew that I wanted to do something more entrepreneurial, actually building products, building companies. Went to Facebook, had a ball there. Left to found a company in the social e-commerce space with a friend from Facebook. Had all kinds of adventures in crypto and in AI. Did some incubations at South Park Commons. And then one of the things I looked into was actually creating distributed marketplaces for GPUs for inference and for training. Because about a few years ago, a friend and I had access to about 800, 900,000 GPUs, consumer grade GPUs through a crypto mining network, if you will. So as part of that journey, ended up meeting Ilya and the Near folks. Really, really thought what they were doing was super interesting. Joined the team about 8-9 months ago, and the rest is history.
Amazing. So I think for a lot of folks, we still haven't gotten into the like why decentralization matters when it comes to AI.
Yeah.
Like most people, like you said, are using GPTs, ChatGPT, Claude. They're maybe using Opus or GPT 5.4. Those are the hottest models today, Opus 4.6. But like when you start getting OpenClaw, you have an option for different networks to choose. There's also Venice and Morpheus out there. So why does decentralization matter in terms of AI? What are we giving up when we're just using Claude, Opus 4.6 on Anthropic's UI? What are we giving up when we're using ChatGPT 5.4 on OpenAI's UI?
So this question can be broken down in a couple of different ways. Let's talk about why, just in general, decentralization, or another way of saying it is user-owned AI matters. For the generation that we grew up in, Dylan, I don't know if you remember, or maybe the generation I grew up in, I don't know if you remember, but back in the day, at one point in time, there was a brief period of years where it looked like AOL was going to take over the internet. How much do you remember those years? They sent all of these CD discs to people that all ended up being like, cup holders people use.
900 free hours.
everyone that used the internet used AOL. I remember thinking for a period of time, maybe AOL is the internet. And we were very close to that world where that might have been the case. But instead, you had this world where you had all of these open protocols, TCP/IP, HTTP, email, that allowed the internet to become this wild and wonderful and crazy and weird place. And I personally love that wild, wonderful, weird, and crazy place. People hopped onto IRC channels where they would have all kinds of interesting conversations. You had forums evolve over time like Reddit. People build their own wacky websites on places like GeoCities, AngelFire, etc. That whole generation of the web was such a creative time.
Mm-hmm.
And that happened because that was created in a way where the internet was decentralized and permissionless. No one could tell you to take down your website. No one could really censor what you said on IRC or like on these different sort of forums and message boards. The world would be a poor place if all of that was controlled by AOL. Play a parallel future. Let's say AOL became the internet. Everything essentially became controlled by AOL. You could only create like an AOL website if you wanted to create a website. All the email, all the different services were controlled by AOL. That would have been a worse world. ChatGPT and Anthropic are wonderful products. I have a bunch of friends from back in my Meta Facebook days that work there. And I think they're doing great work, and those products should exist and deserve a place in the world. But we believe that permissionless user-owned AI that's decentralized, not controlled by any company, but controlled by you and I, that deserves to exist as well.
Yeah.
That's one piece of this. There's a second piece, which is like, which models do you use, right? So you can use these different services that allow you to access different kinds of AI. And then, Near has a private chat product called Near Private Chat. You can access many different models, including ChatGPT and Anthropic on Near Private Chat. But these other open source models also deserve to exist because people deserve to have other options and people deserve to have other AI that isn't controlled by one single company. So that's why I think OpenClaw resonated so deeply, because now you have an agent harness that's not controlled by a big company. Peter did it by himself. One guy built this by himself with support from a community. That's just an amazing story. And the fact that you can run this agent harness on your computer without interference or control from any other company, what a great time to be alive. What a great product to bring into the world, right? That's why I think user-owned AI, open source models outside of the core big models that are developed by the centralized AI companies, that's why agent harnesses that are not controlled by any one person have taken off in such a big way.
I also want to, before we get too deep down the AI rabbit hole, I would love to hear your genesis story with Bitcoin. When did you first come across it? Did it click right away? Did you need a few months to come back and understand it?
I probably like you and many other folks, I first read about the Bitcoin white paper. I think it was on Slashdot or something. It's like on one of the old internet tech websites. And I read it and it blew my mind. The idea of having a financial system not controlled by anyone was so powerful. I went for months where I was not able to think about anything else other than the Bitcoin white paper. I read it, I thought about it, I went on forums, I talked to people about it. People are all like, what's this Bitcoin thing? It's a scam, clearly. Like my partner, my girlfriend at the time got mad at me because I spent so much time just thinking about this thing. I went down a very, very deep dark hole with the Bitcoin white paper. But I went down a similar dark hole when I read the Ethereum white paper. At this point in time, I was at Facebook. I was working on a lot of ad tech products, ad tech networks. And I saw how wonderful and powerful a developer network and developer ecosystem was. The Facebook ad tech ecosystem ended up generating an ecosystem that delivered billions and billions of revenues to Facebook as well as to other companies around the world. The second I saw the vision of a world computer and saw the implications of that, I immediately connected to the power of the developer ecosystems I saw at Facebook. And I immediately thought to myself, wow, this can be something very, very impactful, very amazing. Building decentralized applications feels so powerful that I immediately, at that point in time, started switching more and more of my time and energy from Bitcoin to Ethereum. So those are two very, very big moments for me. Each time it happened, I stopped stopped eating, stopped sleeping, just went deep, read through the white papers, did my own experiments, mined Bitcoin, mined Ethereum, spent time in the community talking to folks. Those were both like very, very pivotal times for me.
Yeah, I lived in the Bay Area from 2015 to 2018. I
Yeah.
was in Oakland, and I distinctly remember kind of being, I don't want to say mocked, but when I would get super excited about blockchain and crypto, especially this was during the ICO era, it was very dismissed. A lot of the conversations I was having were dismissed. And I'm not sure if this was just my experience and this is just one individual's experience, or if you also felt or saw something like that. I mean, when we hear about like the OG San Francisco Bitcoin meetups, like Dan Held talks about, yeah, there was this community there. But I also felt like during the ICO days in particular, this was a threat to the VC model, this new way of fundraising. And so it was very easily written off by a lot of my friends who worked in tech. And so I'm wondering if you felt something similar or if I'm just kind of like making this up.
I definitely felt some of that.
Okay.
If you went outside of the communities, always thought you were weird. I was trying to explain Ethereum to my boss at Facebook. And he got it, but he was like, this sounds also like a scam at the same time. At the same time, there were these amazing communities, sub-communities that formed. So one of the guys that ended up doing the community of huge service was this guy named David King, DK. I'm not sure if you ever bumped into him before, but
No.
he's a strong Bitcoin advocate and a Bitcoin OG. He organized this thing called Curious Conversations. And we had the most interesting intellectual community come through. So DK, Avichu Barg, who ended up founding Electric Capital, which is like a crypto investing firm. Through that, ended up meeting Olaf, one of the founders of Polychain. Through that, Dan Romero came through, who was like a Coinbase OG, and then did a bunch of other stuff. I believe he's right now working with Stripe on their sort of stablecoin as well as like their payments efforts. Matt and Fred, who ended up founding Paradigm, came through those circles. Kyle Samani, Tushar, who ended up doing multi-coin. Like there's so much intellectual capital that came through these meetups, and everyone there was so excited. Like Joe Lubin came through, one of the co-founders of Ethereum. All of the projects that were getting off the ground, Origin, the sort of project founded by the BitTorrent folks, came through. There's so much intellectual interest and horsepower that came through those meetups. So at the same time, outside of these meetups, you would get scorn, you would get skepticism, you would get doubt. People thought you were weird, you were mocked. But within these enclaves, there's so much intellectual energy happening at the same time. It's very wild to be living in both worlds at the same time.
Yeah. So I think when we look back at the kind of like OG days, like a lot of what brought me into the Bitcoin and crypto space in general was this kind of like banking the unbanked.
Yeah.
Not your keys, not your coin, exist in a parallel system outside of the current existing financial system. And you could run into kindred spirits when you're on Twitter, when you're on the forums.
Yeah.
And we were all kind of like aligned with this. I would call myself Cypherpunk light, if at all, because I wasn't on the Bitcoin white paper days, but I also like very much bought into that. And I think when you go on to crypto Twitter today and you see a lot of this malaise and anger or just sadness, it's because I think a little bit of that vision is slowly dying out. I also specifically remember in 2017, the mantra, the institutions are coming, they're coming, and they were going to pump our bags and we were going to be so happy. And today they're here. They're building RWAs, they're building stable coins, they're introducing blockchain into their tech stacks, all these things, and yet nobody's happy. So like, what happened? Did we lose that cypherpunk dream? Or was this always the inevitability and eventuality of where this technology was going to go?
You know, Dylan, what you said resonates with me deeply, right? And I've thought about this question a lot. I think kind of what happened in crypto has been something very similar to Langston Hughes' poem, Harlem. If you remember that poem, there's a line that goes like, what happens to a dream deferred? Right? And I think for a lot of the OG crypto people who had these dreams of, we're going to decentralize everything in the world, a lot of them feels like the dream's been deferred. Right? I think that that's what's happened. If you recall the early Coinbase days, they were all like libertarians, anarchists, preppers. That was like the community at that point in time, right? And the community has changed a lot. And I think that's okay. And we should like welcome people from different backgrounds with open arms and welcome them in different ways. What happened a lot, I think, is that people came to realize that not everything in the world should be decentralized, right? When you essentially go decentralize a database, like a Postgres database, to a decentralized database, like Bitcoin does what, like 5 to 10 transactions per second, like max, right? And then the fast O1s will do a couple thousand right now, typically. Obviously, they can scale up from there, but like typical runtime conditions. And Postgres DBs could do 4 million. So a lot of use cases so far have not been able to find a true use case that trades off against the latency as well as the performance trade-offs you have when you go from a centralized to a decentralized database, right? That is one thing I think that's happened. So there needs to be a real good use case for decentralization. Obviously, a lot of the crypto hardware, a lot of the crypto L1s are getting better. So that comparison hopefully will improve more and more and more over time as you get better and better transactions per second. But there needs to be a real reason for the decentralization, right? You can't just have decentralization for the sake of decentralization. I think that we're finding more and more use cases. So I'm cautiously optimistic. It broke my heart a little bit when Kyle Samani, Fred Ursum, some of the OG investors stepped away from the space to pursue other interests in AI or longevity or like other robotics or other spaces. But at the same time, I think there's an opportunity for us to utilize the primitives we built in crypto in a real way in AI and in other places, right? So whenever you get any kind of new technology that's being adopted, you have excitement, you go through some amount of disillusionment, and you get more and more excitement as things are built up and prove that the technology has real value. I think we're still figuring out the places where crypto has real value, but I think we're making good progress.
Mm-hmm. Do you think we finally hit that point though, where we're out of like the first inning or two, if we're using the baseball metaphor? Because like right now, we have like we're talking banks and financial institutions. I'm no longer hearing fringe art NFT projects. Thank God the meme coin days are gone. I'm no longer hearing about any of that. Do you think we're just at a point where crypto just isn't going to be as fun as it once was?
I think a lot of the attention right now in crypto has gone to institutional adoption,
Yeah.
which is very, very different from CryptoKitties. Right. At the same time, I think there's so much room for additional innovation. Innovation is limited by people's imagination and what they're able to make work. I think people are focused on institutional adoption right now because we're in a bearish kind of cycle where people are focused a lot on making money, justifying the expenses that they have to keep their teams going, building different things. So institutional adoption, which can pay real money and pay the bills, is a natural place for people to want to go. But I'd say like, let's keep our minds open, right? Like DeFi summer kind of came out of nowhere. NFTs kind of came out of nowhere. I think the next wave, next primitive will also come out of nowhere. It's probably being built by some kid in Berlin right now that we don't know about. And being open to these new technologies as they develop, no matter where they come from, I think is an important part of the innovation game.
You just mentioned like Kyle's exodus and other folks who are going to look at other sectors. And I've been a diehard content creator in the blockchain space in 2018. I left a previous career as an urban planner to go full time into creating in blockchain, and I've been here since 2018.
Yeah.
And every year I've kind of been like, I've worn the bear markets and surviving them as a badge of honor. And I was very much feeling that through the second half of last year and going into this year, like, oh, this is my fourth cycle, my third cycle. I'm ready to, show the newbies the way. And when I start seeing news like Kyle leaving and all these other big names leaving, like, oh, you guys, you weren't here for the cause. You didn't believe in everything like you said you would. But then I downloaded OpenClaw and I got so hooked onto AI. My Twitter feed changed from crypto Twitter to Claw AI Twitter. And I immediately, for the first time in 8 years, understood why somebody might want to just like change their vertical, change what they're working in, because it was all encompassing. And when you were saying, when you first stumbled on the Bitcoin and Ethereum white papers, how you were losing sleep, you were forgetting to eat. I've been living that life for the past month, and it's been in all consuming and amazing. And I don't blame folks for wanting to shift. So before we kind of like get into near AI, what you're looking at, what do you say to help keep somebody's seeds planted in the crypto realm as they start to get excited about these other verticals and industries? How do you keep that piece of your heart that's still in love with crypto? How do you nurture that while also balancing exploration and learning new fields?
I think that we should always be open to new ideas. And the fields that you're mentioning, AI, crypto, don't have to be the separate fields. There's a lot of stuff in crypto that can benefit AI, and there's a lot of stuff in AI that can benefit crypto. Um, I think we're both referring to Kyle Samani's sort of tweet that he eventually deleted, where he talked about feeling like, hey, we had all these aspirations for building decentralized applications, and it ended up just being primarily financial tech. That tweet made me sad because Samani is like an OG. He's been around for a very long time. But you have these amazing investors and builders are still here, right? You have Avichal from Electric Capital still investing. You have Seed from Dragonfly still doing really, really great deals. Paradigm still investing in the space, even though Fred left. Chris Dixon still very active in the space. You have still these very amazing investors who are still active in the space, and you have a lot of builders, including the Near team, Sweet team, Solana team, Ethereum team, that are still building really amazing tech.
Mm-hmm.
So I'd say there's still people here building really interesting stuff, even through the bear markets. I also would say it's not either or. One of the things we believe deeply in is that agents themselves can benefit a lot from permissionless transaction tech, right? And I know there are many different standards that are out there. Stripe released one recently in the last few days. Obviously, you have X402 that Coinbase has been championing for a period of time. Near has this thing called Near Intents, which enables cross-chain transactions, the biggest cross-chain transaction protocol right now. And at the same time, it enables you to use natural language to specify transaction that a decentralized network of solvers or people who fulfill that request can do. And then a lot of the things that we're doing in terms of Near built a secure Rust-based version of OpenClaw card called IronClaw. There's so many wild things you can do in that realm at the intersection of AI and transactions, like real economic value. I got my agent to order me a pizza. And then I did a video demo of this, which I showed at ETH Denver this year. But it's not either or. There's a lot of things that we can do that are at the intersection of both. And it's our job in the crypto community and the AI community to find ways that we can use the technology that we built to solve real problems. And I think there's a lot.
When I was first getting into blockchain 2017, crypto 2017, the kind of mantra everybody was talking about was, how do we onboard the first billion users? How do we get the first billion people using blockchain and crypto? And maybe around 2024, at the final consensus in Austin, I went to a Theoric side event and was just blown away by the question that somebody posited. Not when will we get the first billion wallets being used on chain, but how many of them will be agents? And so how do you guys think about this at Near AI, at the Near Foundation? What's the world you're planning for? Are you planning for a world where the entities that are using your chain, your network, your tools, are they going to be agentic? Or is this like where the puck is going? Or do we have to build for a world for both humans and agents? What's your perspective on this?
I think we have to build for a world with both humans and agents.
Okay.
I'll share with you an anecdote I got from a friend here at GTC. I won't dox him, but he walked me through his workflow. He's one person running 9 companies with just one person and 309 agents.
Jesus.
If you look at that ratio, 309 agents for this one person, that's incredible. He's way on the adoption curve past what normal humans are doing. If you look at the average tech person and think about the number of agents that they use on a regular basis, I might use maybe 5 to 10, maybe when I'm busy, 10 to 20 agents. But that ratio of agents to humans can be a very large number, right? In his case, 309 to 1, right? So I do think we have to go to a world where we build for both agents and humans, just because the number of agents that a human can use is going to be significantly larger than one.
I'm like getting I'm following on I guess Claw Twitter now, another CT. Brad Mills, kind of like an OG Bitcoiner, and he's running into these issues where he's just always trying to optimize his agent setup um, by using a RAG in some instances and just over optimizing, it seems, and is constantly running into problems. What's the best piece of advice you have for somebody who's not technical, who's just starting to go down the path of working with agents? How does somebody, let's not talk about safety right now. We'll get into IronClaw in a minute. How does somebody just start scratching the surface of learning how to use and deploy an agent for the work that they do and the workflows that they have?
I think the easiest way, unfortunately, is just getting in there and trying, experimenting with
Yeah.
the tools and ideas that exist, right? If you go on Claw Twitter or AI Twitter or whatever version of Twitter you end up subscribing to, there's so many guides out there. Open a guide, pull open a YouTube video, crack open a beer, and go at it. Have a fun night, right? I think there's so much you can do and so much you can learn from the process of trying.
Mm-hmm.
At the same time, I think what's really smart is try the things that people have built before, or build on top of the things that people have built before, right? The reason why OpenClaw became so popular is because they essentially built a harness that combined a lot of tools, a lot of extensions into one package people could install. Same thing we see for IronClaw. The reason people want to use it is because there's a lot of like hairy security considerations that would be very difficult for you to do as a person, like as an individual. But we have a team that is thinking about these questions day in, day out, and addressing these security issues, trying to improve them day in, day out at architectural level. So use what's been built. So much of this is open source software you can download. And don't just use IronClaw. Use IronClaw, use OpenClaw, use ZeroClaw, use different sort of tools, and come to your own opinion of like what's the best tool for you.
Mm-hmm. I've had 3 moments in my life with open source software and decentralization that completely. I remember the moment I first used each of them. Napster was my kind of first experience with P2P and the freedom that downloading an album that my parents didn't want me listening to, the Eminem album, when I was in 6th grade.
Oh yeah, I remember that album.
That was such an empowering moment. And it wasn't until I used the OG Shapeshift back in 2017 when I swapped my Bitcoin and Ethereum for other tokens, ARC, Vertcoin, Neo. And that was the second time in my life where I felt this power of what decentralization and what P2P offers. And then the third time was 2.5 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago tomorrow, when I downloaded OpenClaw and launched it on my computer. So I came up with this kind of cute little haiku-ish type poem. With Napster, I consumed. With Bitcoin, I participated. And with OpenClaw, I create. So what is the state of OpenClaw? How long, or let's just talk claws in general, because I know that a lot of this is going to lead into IronClaw, and I can't wait to hear about how Near AI, Near Foundation is helping to bring the claws more security and safety, which brings this to the enterprise grade perspective. But what's your kind of like story with OpenClaw? When did you download it? When did you start playing? And how quick was Near to jump into the game and say, this is something we need to be building for?
We within maybe like 1 or 2 weeks after OpenClaw was released, I saw this. I started seeing it pop up on my feed, and I found out about it. And then I downloaded it and started using it immediately. And I remember the exact magical moment. For me, the magical moment was when I connected my OpenClaw to Telegram, text, and to WhatsApp at the same time. And I texted it something. And then an hour or two later, I went to Telegram and I wrote it and it remembered what I texted it. And then I went on WhatsApp and had it, do some research for me, actually for a podcast that I was going on. And it did it. And it was wonderful. And that persistent memory made it feel like it was more than a bot. It made it feel like a friend, right? It's like you talk to a friend on the phone, you text them, you go on WhatsApp, you message them later, and they remember the conversation across multiple different conversations. For the first time, there was an agent that did that, and that felt magical. That for me was the magical moment. Whenever you design products, what I always optimize for is like, what is that magical moment where someone feels something that is tied into the product that you've created? And for me, that was the moment where I felt something special. Now it's just grown from there, right? Because over time, what I've done is I've gotten claws to order me pizza. I've gotten claws to help manage different sort of workflows I've had. It's just increased more and more over time. And that's been something that's worked very, very well. And something that's led me to get more and more increasingly bullish about the claw space.
So I have a new kind of directive when it comes to how I'm building out my agents, my tooling, and everything. And this is also what's preparing me for the world to come. And I want to use this talking point to talk about where we're going next as a society.
Yeah.
But I'm basically doing the terrifying thing of replacing every single job process I have with an agentic workflow.
Yeah.
So it feels like I'm writing my own death sentence by doing this. But if we look at the news, how many foundations are like crypto.com just announced that they're laying off 12% of their staff because they're moving towards focusing on AI and using AI tools to make themselves more efficient. The Block did this last month. We're starting to see foundations, crypto foundations, leaning into this task, into this type of framework. So what's the world coming to us? What's this going to look like? We were saying that we're in the S curve. Our friends back home, I'm from Florida. Not all my friends are into tech and everything. Most of them, if they use AI, it's ChatGPT, just like your friends in Mississippi. What's the world that's coming towards us, and how do we prepare for this?
I have a couple of different ways of answering that. Let me give you the tongue-in-cheek answer first. So I read the story once about Milton Friedman being told that when they were digging the Panama Canal, they were upset that they were using excavators, like big machines to dig out dirt. And they said, it's going to take away jobs from people who could otherwise shovel it with a shovel. And Milton Friedman's response was, why give them a shovel? Why not create more jobs and give them spoons? Right? So there's a variation of that, which is like, I hear this fear that exists in society that, hey, AI will take away jobs. And AI it undoubtedly will, in some cases, take away jobs. At the same time, I think it's really interesting that let me bring in a multicultural perspective. I have family and friends in China, and my sense has been that people in China are excited about what AI can do for society and for humanity. They're excited about the products that can be built. They're excited about the problems this can solve, right? And I'm not 100% sure why U.S. as a society is more negative and fearful, and China's society is more optimistic and joyful about AI. But I hope that there's ways we can inject more joy about the possibilities of AI. If you think about the internet revolution, undoubtedly some people lost their jobs. If you were typing, things on a typewriter for a boss as a secretary, maybe a lot of that work got replaced by computers. Maybe a lot of the publishing work that was done by professionals got replaced by PowerPoint and Microsoft Word and Excel over time. But I think we will all agree that it's made the world richer and more powerful. And the people that got displaced could find other jobs in the economy that could better utilize their talent and time. No, I think the same thing's going to happen in AI. The best people position are people who are adaptable maybe people early on in their careers, maybe people who have had some experience. I think probably the least adaptable people might be people who are been doing the same thing for like 40 years and who maybe are removed from technology. We as a society should be kind and find ways to help those people.
Mm.
But for the vast majority of society, I think AI is going to make our jobs more efficient, more effective. The upper bound of creation is non-existent, right? My buddy, who's running 9 companies now with one person, just created 9 companies worth of value, right? What if we all created 9 companies and we all ran 9 companies with the help of 309 agents? Would that be a better or a worse world? I think it'd be a better world.
Yeah, I also I thought this was trite and a trope until I introduced AI into my life, but I've never been busier than ever since opening up my OpenClaw, because the second I automate a process, I have 5 different ideas, creative ideas for where to go next. And I hope that we can instill this kind of belief in ourselves at a societal level. I also heard an interesting perspective the other day about why China is embracing, particularly mainland, is embracing OpenClaw, because there is a sort of own your own data and kind of inherent understanding of this, inherent understanding of the value that cryptocurrencies offer. And so when you can self host your own AI agent, it just clicks for a lot of people, which is why you see a wide swath of society getting very intrigued and interested in OpenClaw, and not just folks like you or me or younger folks who are really into tech, but like grandmas and aunties and uncles as well. So I want to dig in a little bit more into OpenClaw. What is the definition of this? Why did it take the world over by storm? You hinted that it felt like a friend, and there's a very much a different type of there that I can communicate with it on all these different apps, and it feels like it's interoperable and intermodal. But like, we have other types of agents. So what do you think is clicking for other people beyond just what made it feel real to you?
So this is something I believe deeply in. Some of the biggest revolutions in the world are interface revolutions, right? If you think about when the Apple II rolled out, different computers existed before, but it was the interface that people interacted with the computer that was magical,
Mm-hmm.
easy, beautiful, functional, right? If you think about something like the iPod, another Apple example, right? The technology to make a music player existed before. What was it about the iPod that took the world by storm? It was the interface. It was like a deck of cards with a very cool scroll wheel with all of your music. What was the tagline? Like 10,000 songs in your pocket or something. That interface was beautiful. And then they paired it with actually the ecosystem of songs you could buy on iTunes. But music players existed before, right?
Mm-hmm.
This is not like a crazy thing that didn't exist before. If you look at something like iPhone, phones existed before, smartphones existed before. It was the interface, the packaging of everything, along with a couple of different other innovations like multi-touch, everything happening through the screen. But it was like a change in the interface with which people interact with the technology that changed things, right? Interfaces matter so much. There's this old saying, medium is the message. I'm not sure if you've heard this before, but this is a Marshall McLuhan quote, where basically his point is that sometimes the medium by which something is conveyed matters as much as the message itself, right? Hence, the medium is the message. The medium matters. So, okay, going back to your question, why did OpenClaw take the world by storm? A lot of the things that OpenClaw does as individual tools existed before. Peter himself said, hey, the reason I was able to create OpenClaw is because I built a lot of these individuals tools before. But what happened? He brought them all into one place and essentially created a unified experience that was able to utilize all of these tools at the same time. So I see OpenClaw's innovation primarily as an interface innovation.
I want to push back on that a little bit, or maybe do a little jujitsu with that thought process. Because when you listen to Peter talk, he talks about how why does he need to have a food tracking app when he can just take a picture of his food? Why does he need to have a personal fitness trainer when he can have his agent tell him to work out better based off of how much he ate? And I'm starting to hear this emerging narrative of potential open clawification, removing the need for us to have individual apps. And specifically because we don't need to have an interface of an app actually interacting with us and our data. So, yeah, I just want to push back a little bit and hear what you have to think about that. Are we moving towards a world where we no longer have to have apps and cool kind of front end experiences because we just custom built an agent to be able to chat with us and talk to us and log things that we care about?
Yeah. My response to your point is that the agent is the interface,
Okay.
right? Like, what is, let me share with you one of the ways that we've been thinking about things. So, one of Near's focus areas has been on agentic commerce. And one of the things we see is that the agent can actually be the interface for all products and services. Okay, let me double click into that because that's a really important point. So most people think about agents as maybe a customer service bot on a website. So what's your comp? Your comp is Zendesk. Your agent could be a personal assistant. What's the comp there? The comp there is maybe having an EA or a personal assistant, right? But there's a lot of other ways of thinking about agents. Agents can be the conduit, the interface by which you buy shoes, by which you interact with a financial advisor, by which you get therapy, by which you receive medical care. Now, all of a sudden, the agent actually isn't replacing Zendesk or personal assistant. The agent's replacing WordPress and Shopify and providing services that a normal financial advisor would have provided in a Schwab office, right? All of a sudden, it's become the interface for all of these products and services, right? That's powerful. That's an idea that's 10, 100 times, 1,000 times more powerful than a Zendesk 2.0. That is, I think, a very, very interesting world that we're moving towards, and we have visibility and insight into. And that's like kind of the world that we've been sort of thinking about, contemplating, and building for at Near AI as well. This is also, I think, where sometimes the fear arises, right, from people. If I am that financial advisor, maybe I'm afraid of that future, right? But I think, again, this goes back to shifting from like a scarcity mindset to an abundance mindset and being able to sort of rethink the work that we do in a way where we can take advantage of these technologies instead of being afraid of it.
Yeah, I mean, when I'm preparing a new clause profile now, before I launch an agent, I pre-fill out the user, the skills, the soul, all of that, because I want to be able to launch it on day one, ready to go, and have this thing prepared for what I want it to do.
Yeah.
And by using GPTs to help me draft these markdown files, particularly I'm talking about Claude, because what Claude does is it does a great job at providing a series of multiple choice questions for how you can prompt to build this markdown file. And when I think of a Charles Schwab advisor, when they can just be given 10 times more pre-created user profiles for people who've already gone through this, they can just increase their efficiency by that much more and deal with more customers, deal with more clients, and be much more laser focused. So with this, I want to talk a little bit about IronClaw, because almost immediately when you go and look at anything Claw, particularly with OpenClaw, for people in the know and for people who are not in the know, the number one thing that they all talk about first before all the cool stuff you can do with it is the security issues. So how did IronClaw take into account these security issues and remove them, or create better sandboxes, or create a safer space for people to explore their own claw?
Yeah. This is the immediate thing that we noticed. We here at Near, when we started looking at OpenClaw, which is that very powerful technology. But you probably have seen all of these articles online about how, people on Reddit scanned like 18,000 OpenClaw instances and found like a bunch of them had malicious instructions. There are hundreds of malicious skills on the Claw Hub, the skill hub that they have for OpenClaw. Mm-hmm. And we started thinking from just like first principles, how do you actually make OpenClaw safe. Because if I can't give OpenClaw all of my information, I'm not sure if you saw, but one of the extensions you can use, integrations you can use OpenClaw is you can give it all of your passwords from 1Password. I hope no one has done this for their own personal passwords, because I would be afraid for these people if they ended up doing it, right? But we thought, how do you build a claw in a way where it's safe, where you can give it all of the rich context from your Notion and your Slack and your Discord and your Telegram and your emails, give it some of your passwords, and actually have it utilize that context to be truly useful. Because if you don't give your claw very much information, it can't do very much for you. If you give it access to everything, it can do a lot for you. So we did a bunch of different things. We ended up rewriting the core application. Instead of OpenClaw and TypeScript or JavaScript, we wrote IronClaw and Rust, which is safer from a memory safety perspective, just in general, like a better, safer language. We ended up using encrypted vaults for secret handling. We ended up using WASM, WebAssembly sandboxes for tools, so you can isolate kind of what each tool is able to do. We ended up doing a lot of improvements for prompt injection at the architectural level. And this is something I think about sometimes, which I think doesn't get discussed enough. If you make really good architectural decisions for something, that's hard to change when the underlying architecture isn't as great as it could be. Because to change the architecture for something, you kind of have to scrap it and rebuild it from scratch, right? And there's a bunch of other stuff as well that we built, including network control allow-less as well, right? What does that mean? That means that now you have a claw that's a lot more robust, a lot more secure. And with security is a fundamental architecture. And this, the first version of IronClaw was architected by Ilya, the founder of Near, when he was feeding his newborn baby like late at night, just like building and architecting IronClaw. So the underlying architecture is great. We've shifted the entire focus in the AI team just to make IronClaw amazing. Mm-hmm. And then we ended up launching a deployable version of IronClaw at IronClaw.com, where you can deploy IronClaw and OpenClaw in under 2 minutes. So you don't have to worry about buying a Mac Mini for $2,000 or $3,000, getting it delivered, and worrying about the technical setup. Just go on a website and have it launched for free. We actually allow you to launch the agent for free. The inference, if you end up running inference models, takes money, but the actual hosting of the agent is free.
When it comes to security, two things that I think about are, with my own setup, how do I keep Rails on this thing from getting too far into my own life? And how do I keep it in its own environment? So I would love to just kind of like hear you spitball into how you have a TEE, a trusted execution environment that you leverage, as well as near cloud.
Yeah. So the way that we do this right now is we have the agents hosted on using secure hosting, hosted within a TEE. We'll probably offer options for non-secure hosting. People don't want that in the future. So that's like one protection. Then it's running IronClaw, which has all of the security improvements that I mentioned just now. I still do think it makes sense to give the agent its own email, Notion account, and Slack account. The way I'm doing this is creating separate work accounts for these agents that connect into like Near's Notion, Near's Slack, Near's email. So it has access to context, but with an easily controllable account that I can shut off if I want to at some point in time. It still has access to all the content. And then doing the inference, the actual AI question and answering the query and the response within confidential inference. So Near AI has a product called Near AI Cloud, which is essentially doing AI, running AI models within a TEE, a trusted execution environment. It's a secure enclave of new generation GPUs and CPUs that allow essentially the AI questions you ask a model to be secure in a way where neither Near nor anyone else sees the answers. And this, if you recall to the beginning of our conversation about use your own AI, where no one owns your data, owns your responses, that's like Near's way of implementing that, of having this confidential inference, confidential cloud, doing the actual AI question and answer. So if you take a step back and think about what that means, you have secure hosting with IronClaw, which is secured by architecture, a lot more secure than OpenClaw is, doing AI inference through a secure cloud. So you have these multiple different layers of not only security, but also confidentiality. And they're a little bit different, right? Security makes sure that you don't get hacked. Confidentiality makes sure that no one sees your stuff, right? So you have both security and confidentiality with this entire stack. And that's the way that we've been building this.
I have a question, and I've been grappling with this for a decade now. When will people care about their data? When you look at the past 12 plus years, we've had our data leaked by Equifax, by Target, by people that we were supposed to trust. I'm not saying Target's like a trustworthy company. I'm just giving an example. Everybody has had their data leaked somehow. Are we at a point where we're just so numb to this anymore that we don't care about protecting our data? We don't care about protecting the privacy of the questions that we ask? When is the inflection point going to come? When's going to be the point where society really starts to value being able to keep their questions and their answers private, keep their own data to themselves beyond just the little bubbles that you and I live within?
I have a very specific answer to that. I actually don't think it's society's fault that they don't care about privacy. I think it's because we made society take explicit trade-offs between oftentimes utility and privacy. I think it's wrong. I think it's bad. I think it's actually our fault as technologists to not have solved that, right? So one of my observations at places like Facebook, where I worked for a number of years, is that if you can choose between connecting with your friends and family or handing off your data, if there is an explicit choice, people almost always choose utility over confidentiality. Right? Think about it. If you think about like at events you can meet on Facebook, people have like met their partners, spouses on Instagram or other social networks. If you think about your friends setting up events on Facebook events or other sort of networks, if people have to choose between using these products that offer real value to their lives or privacy, they're going to choose utility almost every single time. Not everyone, but like a vast majority of people. So why is it that we as technologists have made people compromise between utility and privacy? That's wrong. It's bad. It's our own failing. I actually think you have to create products that offer both value and privacy at the same time. Right? Perfect example of this, Signal. We probably have a bunch of friends that use Signal. Great world-class messaging application and security. People don't have to choose.
Right.
People use Signal because they know that it has privacy on top of a world-class messaging experience, not because it has security, but because it has both combined. Okay. Take that back to AI. I think AI, if you offer people utility, hey, this is a really great AI product, but it doesn't have privacy. There's another option that's a bad AI product, but has privacy. People will almost always choose the better product that offers them more utility. So we see this in your AI. Our job is to create an amazing product that offers you utility to people in enterprises and corporations, but also has security. If you're able to solve that, I think people will buy into that vision.
Amazing. As we're zooming out and wrapping up, I think the retail user, the tech geek, is all encompassed by OpenClaw. If you've downloaded OpenClaw and you made it past the first 3 hours, you're probably spending 5+ hours a day there. And enterprise wants to have that because of what they hear that AI orchestration can do and multi-agentic loops and things of this nature. But the security has been a huge issue. So how have you seen IronClaw kind of close that door of concern for enterprise? And what are the type of conversations that you're having with enterprise partners and prospective clients?
Yeah, we're hearing exactly what you're saying, which is that many enterprises are saying we want to use the power of OpenClaw, but we're worried about security.
Yeah.
That's why I actually think IronClaw is a really, really great fit, not only for individuals, but also for corporations, right? You want the power of an agent, but you don't want to worry about your corporate data getting hacked or stolen or prompt injected. I think starting off with privacy first ends up being one of the most important things. And then privacy as well as confidentiality. Remember I said private hosting, IronClaw for security, and then private inference for confidentiality as well. But the other thing that I think will end up mattering as well is building a really great experience. for corporations. So one of the things I've been thinking a lot about is like, what is right information architecture? What's the right onboarding? What's the right UI experience for people to manage numbers of agents, right? If you do OpenClaw right now, it's easy to manage one agent. The information architecture is the chat itself. But if you manage 309 agents like my friend, now all of a sudden you have to have a UI able to handle that information architecture of managing many different agents across many different use cases. And he's kind of stitching this together right now himself, writing JDs for the different agents and whatnot. But I think an actual good enterprise product should be able to handle that all in one just like beautiful, easy to use experience.
Totally. And Near recently joined, 2 months ago, it was announced that Near joined the NVIDIA Inception program.
Yes.
So how does being in NVIDIA's orbit also kind of slingshot these conversations you're having with enterprise level entities in a way that you weren't having last year?
Oh, NVIDIA is a great partner. We're talking to them a lot about partnering through different programs, partnering on events, partnering on creating collateral, being introduced through the broader NVIDIA network when there are clients that need something like what Near is building. These are all like discussions and collaboration opportunities that we're talking through right now. And they're just like great folks, great partners.
Cool. George, I want to ask a spicy speculative question to end. When in the coming 2 to 7 years do you think we're going to see the flippening of agentic wallets versus human wallets? When are we going to have more AI agent wallets that are using blockchain networks than actual humans?
The number of human wallets, active human wallets, probably order of magnitude millions, maybe tens of millions, depending on like your numbers, right? So your question is like, when do we get beyond millions or tens of millions of sort of active wallets on the agent side? That's a really interesting question because you can scale up agents very, very quickly, right?
Just like you can juke network statistics, you can show that your chain has 1 million transactions a day, but really it's just a couple scripts that are running it. So we don't have to use we of course could tomorrow have 10 million agentic wallets, but organic. Like when are we
Organic.
going to see this organic sort of use?
I think within the next 5 years.
Okay.
But if I had to guess, probably somewhere around year 3, based on the sort of products I see being built right now.
Well, George, I mean, I feel like we just scratched this. We barely even got into how blockchain should be preparing better for agents. We barely got into how near tokenomics are preparing themselves for agentic solutions. I was so excited to have this conversation, and I feel like 10 more hours still wouldn't have been enough. But what's the best place that we can send someone to get in contact with you? Or if they're a potential project, partner, user, what's the best way that they can get in contact with the team that you're working with?
Sure. Best ways are to reach out to me on X or Twitter. So at George X Zeng, GeorgeXZeng, or feel free to email me, george.zeng@near.ai.
Awesome, George. Well, thank you so much for your time today. It was an absolute pleasure to chat agents and blockchain and OpenClaw and IronClaw with you.
It's been a real pleasure on my end as well, Dylan.
Cheers. Thank you so much for tuning in to the Smart Economy podcast. To stay in the loop with all of our latest episodes and insights, head over to www.smarteconomypodcast.com. And don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel for all of our video content. If you enjoyed today's discussion, please consider showing your support by liking, commenting, and reviewing this episode on your favorite podcasting platform. Your feedback helps us reach more listeners and bring even better content your way. We would also love to hear from you. So please drop a comment on Spotify or YouTube to share what topics you'd like us to cover next or who you'd like to see as our next guest. And if you or someone you know would make for a great guest, please reach out. We're always on the hunt for fresh voices and new perspectives. And for our NEO token holders out there, please consider voting for NEO News Today as your council representative. We've proudly been serving the NEO ecosystem since 2017, and we'll continue to do so by putting portions of our council rewards directly back into ecosystem growth initiatives. Once again, thank you for listening to the Smart Economy podcast, and we'll catch you on the next episode.